It's Friday, and I'm back with the next in our Fanzine Friday series. Today we're taking a look at the Oracle number 4 from 1983. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer, and this is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. Each week on the Fanzine Friday series, I take a fanzine from my collection off the shelf for a closer look. Today, from the summer of 1983, it's the Oracle number 4. Hope you enjoy the video. We are continuing our look at this fanzine that was produced here in the United States by Chris Bigelow. It's called The Oracle, and you will recall from earlier videos that he was just a high school student when he started producing this. And I've been relying on this compendium book that was put out much later called Complete the Oracle. And it has lots of essays at the beginning I talk about sometimes, as well as copies of all of the different fanzines that were put out. I had the 3 original ones here, but for numbers 4 and 5, I'm relying on the reprints that are here in the Oracle, and I'll mention something else about that here in a second. So this is the Oracle number 4. It comes out in the summer of 1983. He mentions in here in his editorial, as well as in the book in the beginning, where he writes about his recollections of doing this. He put out the first 3 issues. He kind of got overwhelmed. You'll remember how ambitious he was about everything. And he said basically he ran out of money. He had made friends with folks in New York, so that's where he was getting the really good art, like last time, Clyde Caldwell and others who had been doing art for him, but he was paying for that. And he suggests in here maybe he's paying for some of the articles written by people we've heard of as well. And he just basically ran out of money. And so he stopped. You know, he's doing it about every month. And so he stopped. And now he comes back months later in the summer of 1983, and he sort of reboots it. And you'll see he does issue 4 and then he does issue 5, and that's it. In this book, there's an imagined issue number 6, and we'll talk about that when we'll do a video on it and we'll talk about it. Okay, so let's look at the cover. This art this time is by Morgan Griffiths. It's a new artist. Sandra LaPlaca, you remember, did the last couple. Got the MG down here in the corner. This is a very typical sage, scribe, alchemist, magic user type, right? Got the alchemy stuff bubbling here on the front, a little lizard, a skull, because every magic user wants a skull on his desk. Some books with ruins on them, candles to light so he can read. Very typical, not fantastic art, but probably the kind of art, if he hadn't been so ambitious, he should have been using this kind of art from the very beginning, and maybe he wouldn't run out of money quite so quickly. Here's our table of contents. We have some notes in here where he tells you about now that it's going to be published 4 times a year. Remember, before it was almost every month. He had this weird thing, it was going to be 8 or 9 times a year. And so now we're down to a quarterly zine, and then does his advertising and so forth. His table of contents now is divided into 2 sections: regular columns and special features. I have them here in just in straight order. Omens is what he now calls his editorial. Reader's writings, that's his letters column. The Goblin in Fantasy Role-Playing by Ronald Mark Pehr. Play by Mail Gaming is him. The Dungeons of Kroom, again, Ronald Mark Pehr. He's been contributing, remember, every issue of this fanzine so far. Their Only Metal is fiction, written by Dan Ekblaw. Gaming publications, looking at fanzines. Readers' ideas, which are input magical items for the most part, I think, that we got in from different readers. And then the feedback, where he gives you some survey results and asks for your thoughts about this one. I mentioned the contributors as we went along, and then Merle Purnell is who has provided the reader's writing, or the letter this time. We're going to talk about that because it's pretty good. So here is his editorial. It's called Omens. He says, hey, we're back from the dead. How many times have we seen that from different people, right? And so he gives you a little bit of background, and he says, basically 3 weeks before Christmas, I was working on this one, and I just didn't have any more money. And remember, he's in high school. He's like a junior or senior. Junior, I think. And so he tells here that he had told folks that he had started a play-by-mail gaming called Blade Quest. And so if you were a subscriber, he told you could switch your money over and participate in his play-by-mail game. 120 of his 270 subscribers said they would do it, but of those, only 65 actually sent in their paperwork and started playing the game. So he mentions here that people could still continue to play that game if they have any credit. And he wants people to know that most of the people who did choose to play the game have since sent him more money to continue to play the game. So he's kind of saying, look, it's good. You should, it's worth your money to play it. And so he tells you here, that he was under the age of 18 and he basically got in over his head and spending too much money on the high quality fanzine that he was putting out. So he's trying to do things more efficiently going forward. And he wants to tell you, hey, but look, God bless him, I got more great things planned to come, right? So the fanzine is going to be awesome going forward. And now we're starting to create additional products from our company. And the first one is called Witchery and El Caro. And we'll talk about that when we get to the end. So the future looks good. This is going to be great. Hang in there, and I hope I get new subscribers. And of course, he does one more issue, and then that's the end. But so be it. That's how a lot of these go. Okay, so here's the reader's writing, and this is going to take a little bit because this is an open letter to Gary Gygax, and it certainly is not famous like the letter to Gary Gygax and the response in Dragon that happened with the Apprentice fanzine, but this is a pretty good one. So it starts off quoting some things from the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, again from the Player's Handbook, again from the Dungeon Master's Guide. Generally, those comments that Gary wrote talking about how these are the general rules, you're going to be creative, you're going to use outside material in your own imagination, and you're going to make this even better game, right? And then as time went on, and certainly at times, Gary got very particular of saying, like, these are the rules, and you need to use the rules. And if you're not using the rules, I'm not even sure you're playing Dungeons and Dragons anymore. You might, and people speculate, about whether that was frustration with other things that were going on, whether that was a desire to drive people to stop spending their money on other gaming companies he felt like were competition, or if he just truly thought people had sort of, pardon my language, bastardized D&D to the point that it was, something that he didn't recognize, or, he didn't really care for the rules, I guess. In my view, Gary should have said, look, I've created this fantastic game with these ideas we got from Dave Arneson, and then we rewrote, AD&D, and it's being played by millions and millions of people, and it's a fantastic game, a fantastic company, and creativity is never going to cause people not to recognize how awesome Dungeons and Dragons is or his accomplishment. But, so it is. And so in issue 67 of Dragon Magazine, he had written something talking about the need to use the rules and not change them and create some different game and pretend that you were still playing D&D. So, it is what it is. That's what he wrote. So here's this open letter from Merle Purnell, who calls himself a representative of this gaming group. And he just tears into him for like 2.5 pages. And he quotes him, from here you said this and this thing, and now you say, for example, serious players only accept the official material and play the real game rather than playing at it. And these people say, like, you belittle us, you make us feel like you think that we're not able to, play a good game, and that our changes, if they're not stamped with approval, somehow we're not playing the game we thought we were. And, they took it very personally. So it's unfortunate these things kind of rub people the wrong way sometimes. But as I say, I think none of that diminishes how great the game was. But it is interesting to see whoever this was torqued up enough, like I said, to write this really long letter to him, and basically ends it by saying, we'll no longer tell people we're playing Dungeons and Dragons. We'll just tell them we're playing a fantasy game, and we'll stop telling people to buy your rule books and to try and play your game, and just let them play our home-brewed version instead. So the next thing here is this article by Ronald Mark Pehr called The Goblin in Fantasy Role-Playing. And he starts off by talking about some of the background of goblins in popular fantasy literature, and essentially suggests the people consider letting goblins be player characters in their campaign. He talks about the way that he would do that. First off, he says, obviously, look, goblins aren't popular. They're not going to be popular any place that they go. It doesn't mean you couldn't still play them if you wanted to. In his view, goblins are fairly chaotic, so they're not going to do well with order. They're basically only suited to be fighters. In his view, they don't have much in terms of connection to magic, so I don't think he lets them use magical armor. He certainly doesn't let them be spellcasting character classes. And he actually has some very specific suggestions. Subtract 2 from intelligence and wisdom, and then give them +2 to constitution, maximum of 18. +1 on spells that are sort of natural based, things like poison, but -1 on saves for things that are magic based, like spells, staves, wands, etc. It's an interesting article. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't let people play goblins. I just think it's way too complicated. Play by mail gaming, 2 things he mentions. One is Silver Dawn by Entertainment Concepts out of Charlotte, North Carolina. These folks had a very established campaign and role playing. They've got some printed materials that I have. We'll talk about on a different video. But the world of Silver Dawn is their home campaign setting, and apparently they had a play by mail version that you could participate in. And the other one is Beyond the Stellar Empire: Adventures by Mail out of New York. And this was a sci-fi one, which he said was pretty good for sci-fi. Then we have our adventure, Ronald Mark Pehr again, The Dungeons of Kroom. This is a good one. It's a multi-part one. He said it's going to be 4 levels. We get the first level here, we get the second level next time, and unfortunately we do not get the rest of it. It's an introductory adventure for people levels 1 to 3, or maybe levels 1 to 4. And essentially, in terms of background, there's this thing called the Dungeons of Kroom, catacombs from an ancient ruler of this area, where he had put his magical things away, and he'd built these catacombs, and then they were closed off and lost sort of to history. And then recently someone has discovered the catacombs, and the king of the area has asked your party to come and help clear out the menace, because people have been seeing some kobolds from down there, and people in the town have been disappearing. They think the kobolds are raiding and coming up and stealing people, women, children, men in the night for slaves, for food, etc. Which is in fact what's happening. And so you'll get down in there and you'll investigate. He tells you to encourage this to be something that's not just hack and slash, just you're not going through just killing everything. There are lots of kobolds, so you probably get overpowered in some scenarios, and he encourages you to look for opportunities for parlay, for bribing, for types of negotiation and role playing to make your way through this adventure without just basically killing everything that you find. And as he says, he's designed it on purpose to be something where you're probably not able to do that. At some point you're going to get overwhelmed. Here's a map, pretty simple map, and I like this one quite a bit. I think it's an introductory adventure. It's exactly the kind of thing you would use to introduce your players to. It should be one long session, maybe a couple if you guys don't play for very long at a given time. In terms of gaming publications, he talks about 4 different ones here. Phantasy Network newsletter, which he talked about last time and didn't like. He said they really revamped it, and now he's got a new episode or a new issue of this, and he likes it quite a lot. Owlflight, which is basically fiction. It's not role-playing games. The Explorer, he says, is a very amateurish gaming publication. I've never heard of this one before. It's from Lexington, Kentucky. He says 8.5 and 11 paper only, photocopied on one side. And he didn't like it. He said it's poorly written and art's not very good, but it's still something I'd like to try and find just to see what it's all about. It's created by someone named Clarence Marine. I believe I'm saying that. And finally, a professional publication, which is Adventure Gaming. Tim Kask, who was the original editor at The Dragon when he left, later helped start this magazine called Adventure Gaming. And I've got all of those. At some point, we'll take a look at those. And finally, our reader ideas, which is actually, I guess, an amalgamation. It's spells, it's magic items, and a couple of monsters maybe even in here. We'll talk about these just a little bit. So the Mirror Omen is a spell. It's a 5th level spell you can cast, and it will essentially put on a mirror a turn to stone type of spell. So the first person who looks in the mirror has to make a save or they turn to stone. Morlock's magical wand is a wand created by a druid. He doesn't give it charges. I think each of these things should have to use a charge probably. It'll point you towards fresh water. It's like 2 entwined snakes is what it looked like, with little gems for the eyes. The eyes will glow in the presence of evil. It'll give you a pass without trace, and then it will cast Warpwood as a 7th level druid. As I said, I don't think I would let those things just work constantly. I think I'd cause charges and make it wear out. Andalron's Spell of the Fitful Dreams of Terror. 3rd level. If someone is asleep, have to be asleep, you can cast this spell, and if you fail, they'll wake up, probably attack you. If they fail the saving throw, they sleep for 3d4 hours, and they have horrible, horrible dreams. And he said there's a percentage chance equal to the level of the spellcaster they actually die of horror. If they don't, then they take 1d8 per level of the spellcaster minus the level of the character. So let's say 5th level spellcaster, 3rd level person it's cast on, that means 2d8 in damage. The Pendulum of Mindlessness is a magic item, and you take this golden orb in front of folks and shake it back and forth, and it will basically mesmerize them unless something breaks, if they fail to save, unless a spell, save versus spell, unless something breaks their visual. They'll just stand there sort of trance-like, staring at this. And they lose intelligence points, 1 point per minute until you get to 0 and they fall into a coma. Next is the Sword of Wonder, and it's overpowered. It's a +2 long sword for a fighter or paladin, normal for anybody else. It can detect magic within a 10-foot radius, detect good or evil within a 10-foot radius. That's constant, again, too much. And then it basically has charges, and you roll D100, and it can cause various effects randomly. +3 to damage, -2 to damage, stun your opponent for D4 rounds, +1d8 to damage, 1d6 to the wielder, no damage to the opponent. Opponent turned to stone, presumptively you get a save. Double damage, half damage. Opponent will gain 1d10 hit points, temporary. The wielder and the opponent gain 1d8 hit points. Drain a level or hit die from your opponent. Transport your opponent to another plane, or triple damage. Again, I do like the idea of sort of just the random generator. It's got positives and negatives. It's just a little heavy on some of this stuff. Seems extreme, but it's pretty. I like, again, a pretty good concept. The water staff is a magic item, 4-foot staff. You strike it on a rock and water comes out. Pretty good. The Sword of Truth, lawful good in alignment. It's a +3 long sword, and anyone who isn't lawful good. The lawful good is +3 and has special abilities. Continual light once a day, detect evil, 10-foot radius, and you can place the blade upon someone's skin and hold it there, and then that person will be forced to tell the truth, sort of like Wonder Woman's magic lasso. The Potion of Adaptation allows you to adapt to a particular environment: cold, heat, avoid hunger, sleeplessness, camouflage with your surroundings. I would think other things like maybe breathing noxious fumes, etc. It's a pretty good, because it has that very particular use. I think it's a pretty good concept. And of course, you won't take damage caused by whatever it is. So if you decide, again, it's not clear whether you get to decide it or you would predetermine it as the DM. It's a pretty good, pretty well balanced item, I think. Giant Skeletons is a monster which is just a skeleton, animated skeleton from a giant instead of a normal sized human. They're really big. They have them doing 3d6 they carry 2-handed swords, and they do 3d6 with each sword. So it's a little tough. A clever one, and this is Cursed Chair. It's a 7th level magic user spell. You cast it on a chair with arms, and then it sits there. and the next person who sits in it, the arms will close in around the person and cause some crushing damage unless someone or combined strength of 20 can try to pry the arms loose. And then a really odd item called the soul egg. It's a 4-inch diameter disc, hangs on a thin chain. You wear it around your neck, and it sort of binds to you, which is both good and bad. You are forced to let it show outside. You can't wear it outside your clothes. They have to be visible, and it will display your emotions, anger, jealousy, sadness, whatever, for the world to see. Once it's bonded to you, +1 saving throw, +1 to your attack rolls, +1 to your primary attribute skill, +2 to your hit points. And then it will also sort of give you a telepathic sensation if you're in danger, whether that's a monster's nearby or there's a pit trap in front of you or whatever. The problem is once it's imprinted, you can never take it off. It causes you a lot of damage. You lose 1d6 hit points. You lose all the powers it had given you, obviously. And then once it's off forever, all those things benefits you gained are gone. You lose your strength 1 point per turn. And you're never able to wear another one again. You become sort of suicidal and depressed. And so when your strength, remember you're losing 1 point per turn. When it gets to 0, there's 50% chance you die. If you don't, then you will recover, but you'll constantly sort of be depressed for the rest of your life. Okay. So that's, like I said, that's a little tough. Here's the feedback survey for issues both 2 and 3. Remember, they didn't have it in issue 3. So what did they like the most about issue 2? The ready-made NPC article, the supplement reviews in the gaming publication Fanzines, and the reader's ideas, which were new, I believe, magic items. And then in issue 3 of the Oracle, what they liked the most, the libraries examined article, gaming publications, discussion of fanzines, and the interior graphics, which Clyde Caldwell art was pretty darn good. And here's at the end, there's sort of stuff for sale from Horizon, which is, again, he's very ambitious. So Blade Quest, he wants to get you to participate in his play-by-mail gaming, which is up and running. Witchery and El Caro he says it's coming out in July. I'm going to research. I don't believe I've ever heard of this before, so I'm really wondering whether this ever happened, or this is more of his thing where he would take your money now and then decide to sit down and actually create the product later. And then Augury is a fanzine he created, which was completely fiction, and that did happen. I think it only had one issue, but maybe I'm wrong. It might have had a few. But anyway, he started that fanzine, which was full of just third-party fiction. And this is the rear, just to show you, because before it had something interesting on the back, and now he's just gone to this plain publication cover. The Oracle number 4 is, again, a lot of fun, good fanzine, and an incredible product for someone probably like 17, maybe 18, but I think really only 17 years old at the time. Hope you guys are enjoying the series. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you're subscribed. If you like what we're doing, I hope you'll tell your friends. Maybe they'll be subscribers as well. And until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.